Continuous LED lights have become a popular choice for photographers, videographers, content creators, and so on over the last decade. And with their popularity have arisen tons of different options of tools on the market, and each one has different specs and features and form factors, you name it. So, like most gear decisions, unless you are truly diving into the numbers and you consider yourself a gearhead and love looking at that sort of thing, it can be overwhelming and honestly boring if you're just staring at numbers on paper. I'm Lindsay Adler, and I'm a portrait and fashion photographer, and I've been using LED continuous lights for everything from headshots to portraits to commercial work and so much more. So what I want to do in this video is I want to help you out. I'm going to break down the main types, the main categories of continuous LED lights, and then I'm going to explain the key things that you're looking at to get a little clearer overview of what you need to look at when you're making smart buying decisions. We're going to focus on things like the output, the portability, the color options, the modifier control, and ideally it's going to be just the right level of technical. In other words, enough to show you what matters, but not too much to feel overwhelmed. So instead of starting with the specs, I want to actually start with some of the important considerations first. Output determines what and how much you can light, and it's listed in watts. So ask yourself a couple questions. Are you lighting a large area, or are you in a small space? Do you need to shoot with a lot of depth of field and more focus with multiple people, or are you usually shooting pretty wide open? Are you trying to overpower ambient light, or are you mostly in completely dark, controlled environments? If you end up needing more output, this is going to be one of the most important factors as you choose your light source. Higher output is generally going to mean it's going to cost more, and it's going to be less portable. So a good place to begin is to decide how much power you need. In a controlled environment, smaller spaces, something like 300 watts is going to be enough a lot of the time. Honestly, even 60 watts if you don't need to add big modifiers. For larger commercial setups or something where you need to light big scenes, you're going to want to look at significantly more power. To get started, something like 500 watts, maybe 720 and onwards, but big productions, they use 1Ks, 5Ks, even more, though these tools are often rented from rental houses. Portability is about how you work. Are you a one-person crew carrying all of your own gear? Are you shooting in a small studio? Are you moving between locations? Some lights even offer battery options, which can make a big difference if you shoot on location a lot. Large fixtures, they give you a lot more control and output, but for a lot of us, it's not really practical. Bigger crews, they might choose the heavier and bigger lights because bigger crews can support them. But many photographers and content creators, we choose smaller fixtures because they fit better with our workflow. Bicolor lights allow you to adjust between warmer and cooler light. So typically somewhere around between daylight and tungsten with a little bit more range on either side of that. So for headshots and interviews, and if you're just balancing with existing ambient light, bicolor is often all you really need. RGB lights, however, offer you a much wider range of hues. In fact, it offers you any color in the rainbow. If you're creating stylized or color-driven setups, you kind of got to go with RGB lights. Keep in mind that at the exact same wattage, usually the RGB options cost a little bit more, and sometimes the fixtures might even be bigger depending on the brand. So decide what you need. Do you need bicolor, RGB? That's going to make a big difference in the lights you select. In the past, continuous lights offered far fewer modifier options than strobes, but in the past decade, the past few years, this has changed dramatically. Some lights offer basically all the photography modifiers using Bowen's mounts. Now, other types of continuous lights really only offer you to use grids or diffusion. Form factors like tubes or panels, which we're going to talk about shortly, they don't work with tools like softboxes or projection attachments. If you need precise light or specialty modifiers, this is going to change which type of light you choose when you're selecting your LED light source. So next up, we are going to start diving into gear specifics. We're going to begin by looking at the three main categories of LED lights, and these are what most of us realistically are choosing between. Those of us that are photographers, videographers, content creators. It is tubes, panels, and mono LED lights. Now this isn't an either or decision. A lot of us work with multiple of these mixing together in a single shoot, and I'm going to be using NAND lights because that's what I have in my studio. But the comparisons that I'm talking about are going to apply no matter which brand you're looking at. So first up, we have our LED light tubes. Now these linear lights are beloved by photographers, cinematographers, and content creators alike because they can be used in so many different creative ways. Now in a more controlled space, I can use them as a rim light, as an accent light, can use them as fill. In fact, you can even use them as a main light. But where I find them really interesting also is when I go on location. You can tuck them underneath a piece of furniture for a little bit of an accent light, or I can tuck it into the corner. In fact, they even make accessories that allows me to put them in an overhead fluorescent fixture, but they're not fluorescent. They're full RGB. In fact, when I'm using these tubes, I actually hook them up to my app and I can pick the exact hue, saturation, and luminance that I want. So they're lightweight, they're portable, and they come in a variety of different sizes. For example, here I have the Nanlite 15X and the 30X. They make 8-inch size, 2-foot size, 4-foot size, even larger depending on what your needs are. And there's a variety of different kits that include multiple of these tubes. So I use these more for my creative portraiture and for creative cinematography. So the upsides, full RGB, very portable, great to bring on location. The downside is, first of all, they're not very much power output. So if you take them on location and you're trying to balance them with a lot of ambient light in the space, or you need a lot of depth of field, this is probably not the right choice for you. And then next up, there's not too many ways to modify these. If you're used to, as a photographer, for example, using a lot of different modifiers and softboxes on your lights, basically all they make for these are grids and barn doors to control the spill of light. But for what they do really well, and I use these as colorful rim lights all the time. So that is our first category of LED light. Next up, we have our LED light panels. Now this is a favorite among people who do a lot of interviews because it's giving us a nice even illumination. It's great for headshots, it's great for video interviews, video podcasts, and for content creators. In fact, something similar to this is very common with those who are doing makeup tutorials. Now, the one that I'm using right here is the Nanlite Pavo Slim. The reason this is great is it's got a very, very narrow profile, very thin, which makes it easy to tuck away in the corner of a space, even if you're in a small office. Now you might notice that this is full color. There are both full color and bi-color options of this, and obviously the full color is going to be more expensive. So where you're going to see this used the most is where you need even illumination for head and shoulders or for lighting a background. Some videographers and filmmakers will use this sort of light source to evenly light a cyc wall. What are the downsides? Well, not all of them are as narrow as this one. Some of them are much thicker, and therefore they're a little bit harder to rig, harder to fit in a space. And just like our tubes, there are not as many tools for modification. In fact, typically you're just going to have diffusion, which I highly recommend for lighting the face to make it a little even and more soft, and a grid to allow a little bit more control over the spill of light. But beyond that, there aren't many tools that you're going to have at your disposal for modification. If you're shooting primarily head and shoulder shots and doing a lot of interviews, or you just want even lighting, check out a light panel. So last but not least, we have one of our more common LED light sources, which is going to be the monolight style of light. Now the 3 different types you have here are all different form factors. We have our compact, our standard, and then our light with the ballast. So with the compact, obviously the benefits are going to be it's smaller and more lightweight, especially some of the modifiers that are for this particular light are going to be much easier to work with because they're smaller. Now, for this particular one, this is the Nanlite 120C. You'll notice here, this modifier, it is actually a proprietary mount for Nanlite. So one of the downsides perhaps is that it doesn't work with the standard Bowens mount, which you'll see for the other 2, but on the flip side, you can actually use some smaller modifiers. Now, typically when you're working with more compact, you are going to get less output. So for example, it might only be 30 watts or 60 watts. This one I love quite a bit because 120 is a lot, especially if you're working with hard light in a small space. Now these come in bicolor and full color. So here I've got 120 watts at C, which stands for full color. So we're going from compact over to our more standard mono light. This one is the Nanlite FS300B. The best of both worlds is you've got a little bit more output. A lot of these standard sizes will give you more output, perhaps ranging from 120 to 500. They are a Bowens mount modifier, which is great because they work with many of the modifiers you might already own. And then you can choose bicolor, and some of them will even be full color. So why would you bump up to this last option? Over here on the left-hand side, the example I'm using here is the Nanlite FC500C. It is a light with a ballast. So as soon as you go to this style light, it's going to be a lot heavier and a lot less compact, but you get more capabilities. So for example, typically once you introduce a ballast, you start getting to be able to have more power output, more wattage. Furthermore, sometimes when you are working with a light and a ballast, it actually allows the light to be smaller, and a lot of the heat regulation and power controls exist in the ballast itself. And sometimes you need this for the controls to change things to be full color, which is really useful if a light is boomed out really high and you're not using the app. So to look at it, you have our compact, which is going to be lower power, but it's much more lightweight. It is also going to be less expensive, and it is going to use smaller modifiers. Then you have the standard size with the Bowens mount. You're getting more output, and it's going to be heavier than the compact, but lighter weight than having a ballast. And then all the way over with the ballast, it's going to give you more output, more control, more regulation over the light. So you've got to decide which of these features are important to you. And as you might assume, as you build in this direction, things get progressively more expensive, but with progressively more power and features. Now, for your perspective, I want to tell you a little bit how I use these tools. Typically, I am using the 120C a lot in my studio because I'll use it with a projection attachment or a hard light modifier for my creative lighting setups when I want to create slices of light on the face and I want to use something that's a little bit lighter and easier to use. Now, I'm leaning more towards my 300B when I'm doing portraits, I'm doing close-up beauty shots where I want the bicolor capabilities, but I don't need to have specialty modifiers or a ton of output. But if I am bouncing my light, I need full color, I'm using large modifiers, a group of people, I need more depth of field, anything like that, then I'm switching over to my 500C. So hopefully that helps you take a look at the different options available for you out there when it comes to continuous LED lights. But it really begins by asking yourself what you really need. How much output, for example, do you need? What are you shooting? If you're a little bit more cost conscious and you need to be on a budget, what's the minimal amount of output you need? Do you need bicolor? Do you need full color? And from there, what other specialty capabilities will help you achieve your creative vision? So ask all of those questions to yourself and then decide, is the best choice for you RGB tubes, perhaps it's panels, or it's one of the many options of LED monolights. All right, guys, so if you want to see the types of gear I talked about in this video, be sure to check out the links in the description below. And as always, when you're picking up that gear, visit Adlerama.com. See you next time.